Hi. I thought it would be a nice idea to film a July wrap up of the books that I read. I haven't done like a wrap up video at all, so this is gonna be an experiment. I am outside since the weather is quite nice today. And yeah, I have my stack of books that I read in July. It is the 2nd of August right now, so let's go through the stack of books. I read 6 books in July, so yeah, let's get started. So the first book that I read is The Possession by Annie Ernaux. She's one of my favorite writers ever. I've read, I think, like about 10 or 11 books. And this one is specifically about her time when she had this like lover. She had an affair with this man. She broke up with this man, and she finds that he is dating another woman now, and then she sort of gets possessed by this other woman, the idea of this other woman, and she wants to know who she is. And we literally see all her thoughts written down into words, so she's very raw in this book. She has really deep and intense feelings in such a short period of time. And so I think it's such an interesting case study. This is not one of my favorites, I wouldn't say, but it was a really interesting read. My favorite of hers is like Happening and the memoirs that she has written about her parents specifically. But this one was interesting, so I enjoyed this one. I did note a quote in this book in my reading journal, so I wanted to read it. She writes, "The strangest thing about jealousy is that it can populate an entire city, the whole world, with a person you may never have met." And ain't that tea? And it's not just about affairs or romance, I think that applies to many different cases. So, yes, that was a good read. Next, we have Northanger Abbey, which I really enjoyed, by Jane Austen, obviously. I've read most of her books. The only one I have left now is Mansfield Park. And I've been putting this one off a bit because I heard this one is one of her lesser known works, or like lesser read. But I actually really enjoyed this. I think this is her like first completed novel that she wrote. And guys, it's so fun. It has gothic undertones because basically in this book we follow this, I think, 16-year-old girl or 17-year-old girl named Catherine, and she is obsessed with gothic romances, and she decides to go to Bath, travel to Bath with one of her, like, I don't think they're relatives, but like they're close friends of her family, and she meets a man there. What's his name? Tilney. Henry Tilney. And she is obsessed, and she's imagining all of these like crazy things because she has read all these gothic romances that are just not exactly rooted in reality. And I think Catherine as a character is so fun to read. And this is one of her more, I want to say, lighthearted reads. So I feel like this is sort of in the same vein as Emma. Along with romance, I think this is also a story about friendships and how some people don't wish the best for you, even though they say they're your friends. And I think that's such a nice and also kind of mature topic. And yeah, I think this was such a refreshing read. I haven't read Austen in a while because I've been putting off reading all her novels because I just don't want to run out of them. But I honestly think this is one of my favorite Austens. I think it's really up there with Emma. So yeah, I highly recommend this. If you have not read it or even know about it, I think if you want a fun time, this is a fun time. Then I read Severance by Ling. I picked this up one day at Kinokuniya after it being on my like Goodreads TBR since before COVID, I think. And this is a pandemic story written and published before COVID. And if you don't know, one of my favorite books is a dystopian like pandemic book called Station 11 by Emily St. John Mandel. And this one, I picked it up because I hoped it was like sort of in a similar vein. And I think it is similar in a way, but at the same time not. So here we have sort of like three main timelines. We follow this woman named Candace Chen. She is Chinese American. She immigrated to America with her parents when she was younger. And we follow her pre-pandemic, mid-pandemic, like when things start going south, and post-pandemic. So Candace, she works in the publishing industry, but she works for this like outsourcing printing house, and she is in charge of coordinating Bible productions. So any type of Bible, there's like, you know, the basic Bible, the Bibles that are published and designed for teenagers, are all that. And in this story, the pandemic causes people to be fevered, but not in a way that they get sick and die right away. It's in a way that they sort of become zombies. They get stuck in their routines until they basically rot and die. And this is basically a story about capitalism and how we are made to stick to a routine, and how all our lives become work. And this is like a very interesting and crucial portrait of, I want to say, corporate America. And that's the message that I think Ling Ma wants to show. She's holding a mirror up to late stage capitalism. And in the post-pandemic timeline, she survives, and she meets a few other people who survive. Yeah. So it was really interesting. There's a lot of topics in this, especially about immigration as well, like being an immigrant in America. And she does travel back to China in like a section of this book, and I think that theme is also really interesting. So yeah, I do keep comparing this to Station 11, just because they are similar in, I want to say, like an overarching theme of the pandemic story, but they are very different. And I think this is still very well written, very easy to read. I do like speculative fiction that is like more dystopian in this sense rather than it being like super fantastical. So I'm glad I finally read this, and the cover is just beautiful. Then I read The Lover or The Mull by Marguerite Duras. This was one of the books I've sort of been avoiding a little bit, just because I see it so much online, and then I've also heard about the film that was made, and I don't know, like, I think it's the whole illegal age gap thing. I didn't know much about it other than like hearing very little things about it online. So I don't know why I was avoiding it. Maybe because last year I did feel like I read quite a lot of age gap relationship fiction. And I was like, maybe I shouldn't be reading a lot of these in a short time span. But this one, I just found out, like, while reading it, that this is sort of like an autofiction for Marguerite Duras herself, because this is set in French colonized Vietnam in 1920s, I want to say. And basically, this French girl who is not of age begins a romantic and sexual relationship with a Chinese man a businessman who is much older. And the thing is, it's not just that relationship that we focus on in the book, it's also the relationship between her family, especially with her brothers and her mom, who is very absent and might have mental issues, I think. And yeah, I think that part was quite interesting. It's very short, but all in all, I felt like I didn't really understand the story as much as I should. Like, yes, I'm reading the words on the page. I think I get the gist of it, but I didn't understand fully, and I think this is due to the writing style that I just couldn't exactly get into. It's sort of stream of consciousness, which sometimes I get. I like some stream of consciousness books, like Mrs. Dalloway, but this was very, like, kind of disjointed at times and meandering, you know? So while reading it, I felt like it kind of kept me at an arm's length. Like, I wasn't sucked in to this character's study that much. But yeah, the themes, again, interesting. You know, it's the girl, she's white, she's young, but she's also poor. And the Chinese man, he's older and richer. So it's sort of this intersection of like race and class and gender and age. Like, yeah. I didn't love it as much as I think other people like it. Like, I think a lot of people really enjoyed Duras's writing style and the story itself, but I just couldn't get into it that much. So this is fine. It's not bad, but it's not like a new favorite or anything. And then I read Summer by Edith Wharton. This was quite a classical July for me because I was really missing reading classics. I think I've been reading a lot of more contemporary novels, and so I really wanted to quench my like classic thirst, I guess, because the last time I was in a classics kick, I want to say, is like high school or like first year of university. And then after that, I just sort of read less and less of classics. But this is Summer by Edith Wharton. I have previously read The Age of Innocence, and I did not enjoy that book. For some reason, I just couldn't get with the characters. I don't know if it was the writing style either. I read it so like a few years ago, so I don't fully remember. But I wanted to give her another try. And this one I actually thought was a fun read. I read it quite quickly. I read it in a few days. And yeah, I just picked this up on a whim at a bookstore because I ran out of books to read. But this is about a girl, Charity Royal. Her name is Charity Royal, and this is set in like a more rural town in America in the 1900s. So we're set in a small town that's sort of next to the mountain where the girl Charity was actually born, but then like her adoptive dad brought her down to live with the civilized people in the town. And she is currently a librarian at this town, and a city boy arrives to this small town. He's an architect, and he was commissioned to make drawings of the architecture in small towns, I guess, for a project. This guy's name is Lucius Harney. I had to look at my notes. And she falls in love with him pretty quickly. She is, very young. So I think there are similarities with Northanger Abbey with this book, but this one's set in America. And he's sort of playing with her a little bit, like playing with her feelings. Like, he knows that she kind of likes him. Like, honestly, there's not that many boys in this town for her to fall in love with and have crushes with, So he plays with her. She kind of gets duped. And yeah, like, it's just a coming of age story, I think, and a story of the female experience during this time in America, coming from a small town. And yeah, the whole time she was obsessing with this guy who is literally doing nothing. Like, I read it and I was like, girl, why are you so obsessed with him? But by the end, she kind of realizes everything. And yeah, for an American classic, I quite enjoyed this. I don't think I do well with American classics or Russian classics, sadly, but I do want to try Russian classics at some point again. Yeah, so that was Summer by Edith Wharton. Enjoyed that one as well. And the last book that I finished in July is The Shards by Bret and Ellis, and this, oh my god, 600 pages of this story is crazy. I usually prefer shorter books, if you don't know already. So this was a big project for me. I wanted to pick this up because I love reading murder mysteries and like thrillers, and I think summertime is quite perfect for reading certain mysteries. And this one is set in 1980s California. And this was an interesting book, and I don't know how I feel about it fully. How do I even explain this? This is sort of a metafiction because the narrator in this story is Bret Easton Ellis himself, the author. And as I mentioned, it's set in the 80s, and we follow Bret in high school, the actual high school he went to. And he has this group of friends, and they're very white, rich, privileged group of people. And at this time, there's sort of a murderer going around LA called the Trawler, and somehow his friend group becomes connected to the Trawler cases, and we're following Bret as a super unreliable narrator who gets obsessed with trying to figure out who the Trawler is, and senior year starts and this new kid enters the villa, comes to LA. His name is Robert Mallory, and Bret, being gay as hell, becomes obsessed with this man. He's like, he's the most beautiful man I've ever met, but he's kind of sus. Why is he lying about certain things? And Bret himself just really spirals. And we're basically reading his thoughts for 600 pages. And the vibes were there. It was very atmospheric, but it was also very long. Again, meandering. He loves to meander. There's so much foreshadowing because he is writing this book while looking back to this time period in his life. And he's just foreshadowing the hell out of things that happen way later in the book. And it gets a bit tiring, I must say. I think the story itself was interesting. Did I wish it was shorter? Maybe, but I don't know if it would have the same impact if it was shorter. But at the same time, it's like, damn, does it have to be this long? But nonetheless, I think it was an interesting character study. Like, with books that I read, a lot of them are character studies, and sometimes it takes a long time to really execute the impact that you want to, especially with characters. You get into their head, you're like analyzing their actions and stuff, which I think is the beauty of character studies. But yeah, she was a bit long. But did I enjoy reading this? For the most part, yes. Would I recommend this? I don't know. There is a series coming out. Maybe it's already out. I don't know. That Ryan Murphy produced. I don't know if I'm gonna watch it. I've seen the trailer and I'm just not sure. But yeah, that was the last book I finished in July. Overall, I think it was quite a successful reading month for me. 6 books. So yeah, that was my July. Excited for my August reading. I just finished a book today, and there are a couple books I'm excited to read. So yes, thank you for listening to me yap for literally 24 minutes. But I think we're doing this unedited, so let's see if this video is interesting. But okay, thank you for watching. I'll see y'all later. Bye.